Hi, this is Dr. Matthew Garcia, USU Beef Extension Specialist from Utah State University. And today we're on the third part of our proper bull selection as a method to manage production risk. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about pedigrees. Now, pedigrees are another tool that we have in our toolbox to really help us make a more accurate decision that's going to help us implement bulls and that bull's genetics into our herd to kind of match or improve our production goals as well as match our production resources. Now, pedigree, this is just an ancestral kind of family tree, a representation of that bull and where he came from in terms of a familial sense. Now, it does give us an idea of kind of that family background, but the pedigree as itself is not a good indicator of performance on its own. Now, you can look at that pedigree and you can see, okay, this individual is descended from a highly productive family line. But we have to understand that that individual is going to have a mixture of genetics from both paternal and the maternal side of that pedigree. And there's going to be a different combination of genetics with every single offspring. Now, full siblings descended from that line are going to perform differently from one another, not going to be identical. So that pedigree in itself is not an indicator of performance by itself. Now, one of the good things about pedigrees is it does provide us an additional piece of information, or a couple additional pieces of information when we're looking at genetic abnormalities. Most breed associations will identify individuals in that pedigree that have some type of genetic abnormality in their background. Typically, these individuals are carriers of that, so that means that they might not have actually shown that abnormality, but there was a chance they passed it down to their offspring. So there might be a background of that in that family line, but usually what we're seeing with a lot of the seed stock operators and the breed associations, those traits have been selected against pretty heavily. So by the time it gets closer to the offspring as well in that family or ancestral line, it's pretty much washed out. The other thing that a pedigree is a good indicator of is inbreeding. Now, inbreeding is mating of related individuals. It could be, father-daughter mating, grandfather-granddaughter mating. It's basically the mating of individuals. Now, line breeding is essentially the same thing. Line breeding is just breeding to a specific family line over and over again. So instead of breeding to father one generation, you're just breeding to a different related individual in that family line. Now, seeing that individual multiple times in that pedigree, the same individual multiple times in that pedigree, is not an indicator of increased performance. And if we see this, we see it very heavily in that family line over and over again. That's actually an indicator of inbreeding depression. We can actually see performance go down in those individuals for things like fertility and survivability, two very, very important traits in the beef production system. Now, I wanted to share a couple of pedigrees that I've received over the years. This pedigree right here, you can see the top side here. This is actually what we call the paternal side of the pedigree, and this bottom half right down here is the maternal or the dam side of the pedigree. Now, we can see here that it gives us an idea of who the sire is, the grandsire, granddam is. But we can also look at this pedigree and determine that there's a little bit of inbreeding going on here. If we look, Starlight 1003R is both on the maternal side, so this is all the maternal grandsire, or granddam, I'm sorry, and it's also the paternal granddam. So there is a little bit of inbreeding here. Now, being that it's so far back in the pedigree, by the time we get out to the progeny, there's not a lot of effect there, but there is a little bit of inbreeding in this pedigree. The other thing you'll notice from this pedigree is you cannot determine performance of that offspring based solely on the individuals in this pedigree. Now, this is a second pedigree I got, and this is an old Hereford pedigree from the 1990s, I believe. And the thing about this pedigree is you'll notice I have some different colored stars here. The X star, we can see that on the dam side, the dam, we have this FF polo battle down here, but we also have FF polo battle up here on the paternal side. So it's not only a great granddam, but it's also a granddam on the paternal side. Now, this CFF Western Anxiety is not only a paternal grandsire, but it's also a paternal grandsire 2 times over on the maternal side. Now, the more concerning thing about this pedigree, not only because we got all this inbreeding here, is FF battle and ANX1 R31118. That is the sire of this individual, but it is also the grandsire of the dam on this individual. I apologize, the sire of the dam on this individual. So in this particular pedigree, we have a father-daughter mating. Now, being that there is a little bit more inbreeding on the back end of this pedigree, this is something that we could be aware of when we're looking at our pedigrees going forward. All right, this is something else we want to look at when we get pedigree information. We're looking at pedigrees. How complete is the pedigree? Can we actually look at that pedigree and say, okay, you know, this individual is descended from this line. This individual has, you know, a accurate EPD calculation based off ancestral data. So we want things as complete as possible. You know, when we're doing pedigrees and we're looking at pedigrees, we've got to remember it provides us information, but it doesn't provide us all the information. So we're looking at these just like every other aspect that we're going through right now. We want to have as much information as possible to really manage the risk of that decision. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap this section up. And as with any of these sections, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact me directly. And I will see you for section 4 next.